Hello, today I'm going to do something a little different and I'm going to answer 12 questions for book nerds. I'm definitely a book nerd. I very much like reading, so this seemed fitting. Let's jump right in. Question number 1. When did you start reading for pleasure? I have been reading for pleasure for as long as I can remember. I remember taking library trips with my family, having books that I really enjoyed reading, rereading books. The only time I feel like maybe I kind of fell off the reading wagon was during my undergraduate degree, so after high school through those 4 years of undergraduate. And it wasn't that I wasn't reading anymore, I just wasn't reading for pleasure as often. I definitely still did in the summers, but not as much during the school year. During high school, during graduate school, pretty much all the other times as an adult, I've always read for pleasure. But yeah, during undergraduate, not as much. Question 2, what popular book did you dislike? The only one that's coming to mind is the Twilight series, but not for the reason I feel like most people dislike it. Most people dislike it because they find it, I don't know, far-fetched, or the characters are too intense. That part doesn't bother me. The reason I didn't care for that whole series is just that I don't care for the writing style of Stephenie Meyers. It was a little sophomoric in my opinion, just for lack of a better word. There was a lot of adjectives that were just constantly repeated, and I just felt like the concept of the story was kind of unique, at least at the time. But yeah, I just didn't personally care for the execution. I know a lot of people that love that book, and in my opinion, any book that brings people to reading is a great book. I just personally didn't care for that one. Question 3, what book should everyone read? My go-to recommendation when people ask me what they should read, if they don't have a particular genre that they like, because if they do, or if they have a book they've liked in the past, I can kind of tailor it a little better. But my go-to book recommendation is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I have liked that book definitely since my early 20s, if not before. I have bought, I don't even know how many copies. I'm somebody who definitely loans books out. I've loaned that book out a bunch. Some have come back to me, some have not, and I'm totally fine with that. I just really like it. I've listened to it on audiobook at least once a year, and I read it whenever I have a copy. I don't currently have a copy, but yeah, The Alchemist. Question number 4 is, what genre do you never read? I feel like I'm a pretty varied reader. I'll read nonfiction, fiction, popular books, kind of random books, sci-fi, fantasy, mystery. The only genre I can think of that I don't intentionally set out to read is romance novels. It just doesn't appeal to me. Now, if there's a romance as a part of some other storyline, that's fine. But yeah, that I can think of, I don't think I've ever just read a romance book intentionally. I don't know if I've ever read one, period. But yeah, romance novels don't tend to attract me, ironically enough. Question number 5, what's your favorite book? I hate this question. I will usually go to The Alchemist that I mentioned before, just because, like I said, it's my go-to recommendation. However, there are probably 10 books that at any given time may or may not be my favorite book. So I'll go with The Alchemist, but it definitely varies, and the type of story and the genre of story that are my favorite are all over the map. Question number 6, if you could have a pint with any author, alive or dead, which one would you choose and why? This is another tough one. Part of me feels very compelled to say J.K. Rowling or Brandon Sanderson. I had somebody else and I forgot. J.R.R. Tolkien. An author of a book that I'm very much drawn to and read over and over again. But I have had, not that I was thinking of a pint when I was a kid, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to meet Roald Dahl, just because his books were different and I always really enjoyed them. So I'm gonna go with him, but it wouldn't be a pint. I think I'd want to go for ice cream. Number 7, where is the best place to read? Where isn't the best place to read? My favorite place to listen to audiobooks is on road trips, particularly when I'm the one driving. If I'm actually reading a physical book, it would normally be probably on the couch or in a comfy chair. If I'm reading on an e-reader, I love to read on porches. Somewhere around here, I have a Kindle. I don't use it a whole lot, only because recently, since Ani's been around, it's mostly been audiobooks for me. It's just easier. But yeah, probably either listening to an audiobook in the car, on a road trip, the couch, or like a recliner, or on a porch. Particularly a porch overlooking some body of water. Question number 8. Who is your favorite book character? Again, this one's just tough. My knee-jerk reaction is to say Hermione Granger. I just like her character's development quite a bit, and I think I'm going to stick with Hermione. There are definitely other book characters that I'm very drawn to and I like, and obviously all good characters have pros and cons, character defects, just like real humans, but I'm going to go Hermione. Yeah. Question number 9. What book death hit you the hardest? Oh, I know. If you have ever read Where the Red Fern Grows, I won't spoil it, but there are some sad parts in that book, and as a kid, it devastated me. Similarly, Bridge to Terabithia, although I actually saw that movie before I read that book, hit me in the same way. And then when Sirius and Dumbledore died in Harry Potter, those hit me hard too. So if I had to limit it to just one, I would go with the character's death and Where the Red Fern Grows. Actually, that's not a new book. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. The dog's death at the end of that. Oh. And I've actually not read that book since. I think it was Anne that died, and then Dan died later, but it might have been the other way around. I honestly can't remember. But that scarred me. We had to read that book, I think, in 6th grade. And I can just remember sobbing in my bed. And then when I went into school the next day, we were, as like a reward, going to get to watch the movie. And we barely got the movie on before I was sobbing and asked to be excused from class because I didn't want to see the movie. I have always been somebody who cries very easily at anything fictional. Books, movies, TV shows, all of it. Question number 10. What book world would you most like to live in? Ooh, I don't know. I'm going to go with the Shire in Middle-earth. I don't know about the rest of Middle-earth, but something about the Shire, just like living in a hobbit hole, all of the meals, and just the companionship of that sort of society, I guess, just seems appealing. Granted, they never get to travel anywhere, and I love traveling, but that was the first place that popped into my head, so I'll stick with that. Otherwise, I think it would be cool to be a wizard in sort of the Harry Potter universe, preferably after the whole Voldemort thing is taken care of. Question number 11. What are you currently reading? Most of what I'm reading right now is what I'm reading to Ani. We have just recently finished listening to Mrs. Frisbee and the Rats of Nim, which is a book that I really liked when I was little. And we just started a book series geared for younger girls, and I cannot think of what it's called, but we're also simultaneously listening to the Harry Potter books again. I read them to her when she was in the NICU, and now we're listening to them together on audiobook. So, Harry Potter, I guess. And question number 12 is, what book has been on your to-be read list the longest? The only one that I can think of is 100 Years of Solitude. I have tried several times to read that book and have not gotten into it. And the whole reason I'm as committed to reading it as I am is when I met Lauda and asked her if she liked to read, and she said no. I said, well, are there any books that you've really liked? And that was the first one, and I think the only one she listed. And I just don't like it. She has told me, because she's tried to read it in English, she feels like it's a much better book in Spanish. So that could be part of the issue, is I'm reading it in English and it was written and meant to be in Spanish. But that one has been on my to be read list, TBR, since we met, like very early on. So you're talking 7+ years at this point. Cannot get into that one. There were a couple bonus questions that I'll get into, and the first one is, do you always finish a book series once you've started it, or do you only read the first book? It really just depends. If I like the series, I'll keep reading it, but there have been series where I kind of fall off and don't finish them just because I don't like the direction it's taking or the storytelling doesn't speak to me anymore. But most of the time, I think I finish them. The next question was, do you loan books out? I already said yes. I've loaned out The Alchemist so many times, as well as other books too. And I will say I wouldn't ever loan out a book that I would be upset if I didn't get back, which I'm pretty open with sharing. So yes, I definitely loan out books. What book do you have the biggest emotional attachment to? I'm gonna say Harry Potter. The reason Harry Potter has such a strong sort of emotional tie to me is I remember reading them with my youngest sister, who when they were out was very young. We went to see all the movies together, so that's just sort of a fun bond that I have with her. Yeah. Anyway, so that is all the book nerd questions. Hopefully you liked this video, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye!